thank you guys for coming along today and having a chat. We're looking forward to talking about obviously you guys as match officials and your recent achievements. You both have joined the national list of match officials. So, Brad, I'll start with you first, and Twayne, you can elaborate, but talk us through what that actually means for the uneducated and how much this step up means for you both.
It definitely means a lot. It's been quite a journey. I started refereeing 16 years ago, so every year you get a little bit closer, but you never really know how close or how far you are until you're there. So obviously, it was a really good feeling to be selected, and very grateful. I'm lucky enough to have a lot of people who have helped me get here, so wouldn't be here without those people. So yeah, it's quite. It feels really nice, but you're only as good as your last game.
Absolutely. Likewise, it's been a pretty long road, I would say, in commitment for refereeing for this time, and I think being able to get to the highest level of achievement in this country is something that both Brad and I are definitely grateful for, and the recognition does show itself. And we've had League One along with many of our districts and our province supporting us, and it's been a journey that's kind of paid off, if you will. But we're still both kind of grinding and hoping to be optimistic towards the future and future opportunities because we're very fresh at this. But as it stands right now, we're both kind of enjoying our promotion and kind of looking forward to not only our own goals going forward, but how we can kind of support our province as well. So it's been a journey and something that we're both grateful of.
Brilliant. So what is it now that you both can do? What kind of doors are open now that you've taken that next step up?
So at the national level, this kind of allows the door for professional games. Just prior to becoming a national referee, Brad and I were a part of the Next Gen, formerly called, of course, now it's called the, of course, National Acceleration Program. So we have, promotion through that where they allow us to do professional games in the atmosphere, see if we're quote unquote capable. And of course, you get assessed every game, and this gives you the abilities to be involved with the CPL now. So we're regularly week in, week out involved with the CPL games, Canadian Championship as well. So these are games that we would be allowed to do in terms of becoming a national referee. So we are now the highest level in terms of refereeing or officiating for this country. So a lot of people always ask that question. It's like, what do you get now that you're national? Can you do the MLS? And I'm like, not really, not quite there. But within Canada, this is our highest level, and this is where we do referee and perform there. So
Yeah, so just to kind of build off that, over the last couple of years, it's you maybe get one or two pro games, and they kind of test you out, and if it goes okay, you get a few more. So over the past few years, it starts with one or two pro games in the season, and then maybe get a couple more. But most of our games would be League1 Ontario or OUA or OCAA. And then as you get a little bit closer, it maybe gets a little closer to 50-50 between pro and semi-pro and university. And then so far this year, it's been a large majority pro games. I think I have two League One games so far this season, and I'm guessing Twayne's about the same. So it's been very busy, but a good busy.
Brilliant. And Twayne mentioned as well, this helps you guys get to the next steps in your careers and almost helping you on your way to the things that you want to achieve. What are those goals for both of you, and where do you want to get to?
I guess I'll take that one first. Honestly, since I started refereeing, I've always just wanted to do like more competitive games. I found them more entertaining and just more enjoyable to be a part of. So I've kind of kept the same mantra as I've gone along. So while I'm really enjoying CPL, do I look forward? Maybe, but also you got to kind of have to keep your feet on the ground as to where you are right now and just worry about what you're doing. And if you do well, the other opportunities will kind of take care of themselves. I'd like to take it as far as it'll allow me to go. I'll say the World Cup's always the dream and the goal, but it's not easily obtained. So I'm enjoying the process. If it keeps moving forward, great. If this is where it kind of plateaus, I guess you could say, then I'm still very happy and grateful.
And honestly, just to follow up with that, we are probably the most grounded people in terms of being match officials. The fact that we get assessed every day, you really get to see your mistakes right away if they do happen. So, I mean, honestly, we're realistic. Like I said, we're grateful for being here. And baby steps, little steps at a time. I think for the future and what that entails for myself, why not achieve World Cups? Why not achieve international tournaments? Whether that's working with CONCACAF, whether that's working with the MLS, whether that's other things. Because we've had officials who've gone there, so we've had people within Canada that we can look forward to. Whether it's the Drew Fishers, the Joe Fletchers, we can actually say, okay, it's possible. We're on the right track. We're on the right trajectory. So right now we're very fresh at this, very new. Right now it's about getting the things that we can control right, so that we can possibly get there in the future. So sky's the limit at this point, to be honest with you.
Brilliant. And looking on a League1 Ontario perspective, what are the types of things that you've learned from officiating in League1 Ontario and the skills that you've developed, and perhaps the things that you will take away going forward on your journey as you become better and moving up the ranks of match officiating?
For sure. I'll probably tackle this one first. And the first thing I always like to tell everyone is I couldn't believe in the manual for the first year of my officiating career in League One was that I had to put on a suit to show up to a game. I think for me, as a young 17-year-old boy, I couldn't fathom, why am I going to a 35-degree weather game in a suit? But at some point, it instills that professionalism in you. And, those things kind of grew, I think, Brad and I towards the atmosphere that we're in now, showing up to these games 2 hours in advance, doing homework for preparation and understanding what teams are dealing with that day. Whether it's field checks or field inspections, all of the things that we did for League One, being the semi-pro atmosphere, has now transferred directly to the professional atmosphere. So we're now ready to perform without even that changeover. We have several different officials across the country who are now getting access to League One and getting that taste. And me and Brad have had that for several years. So I think we can consider ourselves lucky to be able to have that training ground, if you will, to now, take off those training wheels and go towards this professional atmosphere, but with the same things in play. Maybe not the suits, depending on what game it is, but everything else, quite frankly, between coordinating with game day officials or match day officials, coordinating with managers, field site inspections, all those things, showing up early, they are all transferable to our professional game now. So if you want to add anything there, Brad, as well.
Yeah, you took care of a lot of the off the field stuff, so maybe I'll touch on the field. Like if we rewind 6 years before CPL started, a lot of the people in League1 Ontario have gone on to either be CPLers or in the MLS or on the Canadian men's national team. So like from a speed and technical standpoint, we've been really fortunate to see these top players for many years, so that when we either see the same ones or people of a similar quality in CPL, we're more ready for it. Because every level you kind of jump up, the speed gets a little bit quicker, the decisions need to be made a little bit faster, and you still can't forget the mechanics while you're at it. So our first years in League One, I'm sure it was a bit of a rush where the speed is just so much faster. And then as you do more games, it kind of slows down for you and you get your bearings. And then you jump up to a different level, and then it's the same kind of process all over again. So getting to do League One, you get to work out some of the kinks earlier on, hopefully, and maybe in a little bit of a less pressure where your calls aren't being quite as scrutinized as it would be when you're televised. But a lot of League One games are now televised, or everything's on YouTube, right? So there's no hiding, and I think League One really helps prepare us for. You get to watch your games on video, where up until that point in our careers, you maybe see 1 or 2 games on video, and you learn a lot when you see yourself. And it's like, oh, do I really look like that? Do I run like that? Oh, wow, I thought I was going a lot faster, but I'm kind of trailing play a little bit here. So for me, the speed of the game and the technical skills are very good in League One, and they have been since the start of it. So that really helps prepare us.
Awesome. And you mentioned that there's lots of eyes on the league, and perhaps even increasing eyes on the league now with promotion and relegation, and obviously lots of international competitions that are happening coming up that have League1 Ontario alumni, but perhaps having more eyes shows how much of a platform this is for match officials who are starting out and perhaps are following in your footsteps and going, actually, yeah, this is a really good platform for me to kind of get my name out, get some good performances under my belt, and then they're all on YouTube for everyone to kind of watch and see how good I am. There's that opportunity there as well, isn't there?
You're right, but when it comes to refereeing, you hear a lot more about the bad than the good, and that's just kind of comes with the profession. So if you have a good game, I take it as no news is good news. Because if there's bad news, you're going to hear about it from someone, or you're going to have a friend like, "Hey, what'd you see on this one?" It's like, "Oh, did I get that one wrong?" Okay. But yeah, that's just kind of how refereeing works. And when we're in our education sessions, it's the same thing. Everyone's looking for what the individual on the screen do wrong more than what did they do right. And, I think it's just a growth mindset across the referee community where we all want to be better. And to do that, you have to learn from your mistakes and other mistakes.
Yeah, and just to tag on to that, I mean, there's no hiding anymore, whether it's for good reason or for bad. I think everything's on display. I have friends in England who have somehow gotten clips from League One, and they're asking questions about what's happened on this play with certain decisions and whatnot. And it just goes to show you that, like, even what I consider a smaller league in Ontario is transcended now borders to a different country, and people are now asking what decisions are being made there. So I think access is huge. I think the league's grown tremendously. And previously, if you did a game, you had a crazy good game, no one would believe you. But now, you can actually clip it and be like, hey, go watch this clip on YouTube. Or even if it was a blunder and you made a mistake, you can at least own up to it, and you can have feedback from your assessors, from your mentors, and etc. But that was not once a thing, and now we have access to that. So it's a beautiful thing for sure for us for development.
Cool. I'm going to ask two questions here because they might kind of lead on to each other. So what perhaps obstacles have you faced and kind of through League1 Ontario being able to perhaps help overcome and learn from? And then leading on from that, your highlights, because sometimes coming through those make the highlights even better, or actually make you more selective on your highlights. So talk us through those obstacles and perhaps those highlights that you've had in your careers so far.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bigger question. I think obstacles wise, if I'm starting to think about different things across my refereeing career, I would say, transitioning from a referee to an assistant referee would probably be an obstacle, but not necessarily now that I love being an assistant. But in the early days, really getting games under your belt was a hard thing. I think previous to League One being around, we didn't have as many leagues available to us. So it was the OSLs, the OUAs. And like Brad was hinting at earlier, the national body or referees would have taken those games. So you weren't even really given that much access to as many high quality games in the past. And the ability to kind of be tested out on those as a match official wasn't quite there. With the birth of League One, now you had more games with League One reserves. You had more games for people to actually test their, skills out in the middle. And of course, that's something that we've kind of been able to jump over and hurdles. Organization as well with teams. I think obstacles in terms of trying to officiate games where maybe people didn't treat their league as serious as League One, so you're trying to enforce rules by the law and they're not getting respected, and that's a tough bridge to cross, because you're trying to tell guys, hey, like, for example, we have cut sock situations. Guys are understanding of it in a semi-pro professional atmosphere, but if you go directly below that, it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a challenge that you have to try and enforce. So it's a bit of a situation in terms of League One offering a bit more for us to kind of be like, no, this is a semi-pro league. We have to follow the rules. We have a structure here. We have a show to put on, for lack of a better word. But in terms of opportunities, I guess quickly transitioning there, games. I think games have been a huge help for us, and games that matter, right? So it's not just your local team, not just local guys who have been around forever. These are kids that need games in university off season. These are games that matter for promotion, relegation, like you said, this year, or playoffs in the past. People actually care, and that's a big thing for us as officials, to get that competitive atmosphere and feel that drive, because there's that pressure element now that we have versus before with those previous leagues. I mean, not that the pressure wasn't there, but maybe it's not as heightened with that, particular league. So yeah, I think those are kind of the obstacles that we've overcome, and a little bit of the advantages of the league for myself. And I'm sure I'm missing a few, but I'll have Brad take it away, and maybe if I think of a couple more, I'll come back.
Yeah, so to build on that, getting quality games was a struggle because so I'm born and raised in Orillia, Ontario, and for those who don't know, it's a little over an hour north of Toronto. So once I hit about the regional level, we didn't really have regional level games in Huronia. We had maybe one or two teams, but even then it was the south end of the district. So to get a game of that quality, I was driving an hour o'clock on a 9 o'clock kickoff on a weeknight, and then going to work at 7 a.m. the next day, and doing it pretty frequently back then. Now we're kind of lucky where we're doing one game a week, maybe two, but back then it was a lot more than one or two a week. And 9 o'clock kickoffs, and a lot of times I was driving to Aurora or Vaughan or Scarborough, and just to get access to these games to give myself the opportunity to keep developing and also meet the standard of games I need for the future levels and promotions. So that was definitely a big hurdle and a challenge. But compared to some other people who are doing the same thing but from Windsor, not quite as bad, but definitely a challenge. Twayne talked about it with whether a referee or assistant referee. At some point in your career, you're going to need to choose a path. So when we first got on the next gen list, it wasn't instructed what you're going to be. You had a choice. So I started my professional career as a referee and then transitioned to an assistant referee. It just fit better. So that was a challenge figuring out, how am I going to do this? And then I think some of my skills were more set towards referee. And then once you've committed to being an assistant referee, you need to transition where like the training and the movement in particular are very different between a referee and an assistant referee. Assistant referees need to be a lot more explosive, which is probably one of my not so strong suits. So working on that has always been a challenge. Other than that, it's just, you can have tough games, and whether they go well or they don't go well, you can do everything right, but come out of a game feeling not good. And it's kind of like, why am I doing this? I just drove 2 hours each way to do a game, got yelled at for 90 minutes. No one liked anything. And, it's a lot of mental strength really to kind of persevere through some of that, or some of the name calling, or, stuff that goes with it. I think we've had a pretty good mindset about they're kind of yelling at the shirt you're wearing more than yelling at you, the person. So I always try to keep that in perspective. But it's definitely a struggle, or especially when it is you that mess up and that you messed up. And then coming back to see the same team next week, it's like, oh, geez, how am I going to face these guys? How am I going to get my credibility? So dealing with those challenges, but overall, I think it just makes you a better person overall for handling some of these obstacles that come our way. And you also asked about achievements and some of our highlights. So unless Twayne has something to jump in or to add on, I'll kind of go on to that. You're okay? Yeah. So like there's a whole lot of games in particular that kind of stand out in your career. Maybe your first national tournament, your first pro game, my first semi-pro game, my first League1 men's middle was a big deal. Like all those things kind of stand out to you. Getting to do maybe a season opener, or like being from the Orillia area, the Rovers are a pretty new franchise. They won last year, and I got to officiate their first game. That's kind of memorable for me because when I was coming up as a player, we didn't have that level of play in our district, so it was just kind of cool to be a part of. First pro game I mentioned, first national tournament, your first final. Those are very memorable. But honestly, it's the people you do it with sometimes more than it is the game itself, because you can have a great bunch of people you work with on a really not so great game and still have a great time and be a very memorable experience. And you can have a really good game and it's just it's another game that just happens, because I can't even count how many games we've done to get to this point. So some of them kind of blur together, but some of them definitely stay with you for a while.
Brilliant. And I think you've both touched on things there that will not only motivate the new crop of match officials and perhaps people that aspiring to, again, follow your footsteps, but good advice that people can take away and go, okay, I understand what these guys feel, and these guys sometimes feel the same as me. So I think, yeah, some really insightful bits of information from you guys there. My final piece is, why should people get involved in refereeing and match officiating, and how can they perhaps start their journey?
So the first thing I got told as from some of the elder statesmen was that it looks really good on a resume, and when you get in an interview, there's a lot of transferable skills, whether it be managing conflict, whether it be working in a fast-paced, high-intensity environment, whether it be even just your fitness, because health and wellness and fitness all play a part in your overall life and standard. So that's important. You don't need to take it to the high level even. It's a really great job for high school kids or people going through university. It's a great side hustle, and like for me as a teenager, I just loved being around the fields, and I was there anyways. So why not watch a game that I was already watching, make a few bucks, and get to do some running while I'm at it. So it really is a great job. It's just really maybe dealing with difficult people at times, and making sure you remember that it's not you they're yelling at, and finding ways to deal with it, because it's our job to remove those, I'll call them bad people, from our game. We have to enforce the laws of the game, and if people aren't behaving up to standard, then it's on us to address the situation one way or another. So that sometimes scares people off of refereeing, but I really think that the culture is changing a bit, and I think more referees are kind of upholding the necessary standard to get those bad apples out of the game. So I would recommend it to anyone, and there's so much support from either the clubs or the district or just your fellow colleagues that it really helps you on those tough days to stick with it.
And just to carry on with that, I think just to piggyback, from the grassroots level, I think going forward, same like Brad, I think it's a great thing to put on a resume. As a kid, I think it was my very first job, to be quite frankly with you. So being able to get some money in the summers after a soccer practice, why not, step onto the field like Brad said there and make some buck. I honestly now have been trying to promote it through school. I'm a teacher by trade, and I've managed to actually to convince 2 or 3 of my students to become match officials. And it's a great way to stay involved. I go, rather than becoming the lifeguard, why not become a match official? And you could literally go from practice right to your house league and make some money right there, right? So I think monetary value is pretty increased there in terms of getting, quick buck as a 16-year-old, as a 15-year-old. Obviously, those skills are life changing. I think being able to manage adults, being able to manage kids, being able to manage 22 upwards of 40, 8 at sometimes players on a field is going to be something that you can actually take to that workforce. So whether that's something that you try and fail at a very young stage, I think that's something you're going to realize, like, oh my God, these are some skills that are going to be with me for the rest of my life. Going forward to the next stages in life, I think it's allowed me to, 1, stay fit, 2, stay involved with the sports. I think coaching is I love soccer. I probably would have went the coaching route as well, but it's a much harder task, I think, to control, because you're dealing with the team. I think refereeing is you're dealing with your crew, of course, but you can manage things in your area and your potential in that case, right? So I think going forward to those professional levels that we're at now, I think the ability to stay fit, the ability to be involved with the game. I think Brad has definitely had the ability to referee some, highlighted players as well as myself. I always, say to my kids, I've had the ability to referee guys that you're seeing on TV. Like these guys, I've shook their hands. I've refereed. I've been on the same field with them, and that's kind of a scenario where it's like, okay, this job is rewarding. I'm still involved in the sports, whether that be with the flag or the whistle. but we are still part of the game, and it's something that, you know, won't ever change for me. And I think it does allow me to kind of still feel connected with soccer. So it's a beautiful thing for sure.